My name is Charles Bwire. I have been in the art profession for the last probably 25 years. I started off mostly on the graphic design aspect of things. Then I moved on to advertising. So I have a lot of experience in things like display design, where I have used sculpture, but not realism sculpture. It's only 2 years ago, in 2016, July of 2016, is when I decided now I want to do full-time sculpture. I always insist that if you want to be a good sculptor, if you want to be a good artist, then you need to start with anatomy, be it human anatomy, be it animal anatomy. Anatomy is basically just the study of species and their forms. And now when we talk of forms, you need to concentrate a lot on the bone structure, and then the muscles. So you need to know, for instance, if I have my arm, when I fold my arm, my biceps would contract, right? While it is contracting, my tricep would be relaxed, you know, and vice versa. So you need to know how do muscles and bones relate to each other. And when, let's say, a human being or an animal is standing, you know, how do the muscles relate? When I'm in motion, I'm walking, you need to know how do the muscles and the bones relate to each other. And over and above that, you also need to have the proportions, you know? Like it is estimated that for a normal male human being, the head is about 8 times the rest of the body. It fits 8 times into the rest of the body. For a lady, it's about 7 times, right? So you need to have all these details. Now, when it comes to sculpture, the most basic thing somebody needs to learn, you need to have the skeleton or the armature. The armature is basically built from stainless steel or what we call binding wire. Because this is binding wire, I am doing what you call miniature sculpture. So I use binding wire. If I needed to make a big sculpture, let's say a life size of me, then I would have to use tougher metal. And on that framework, then you start doing what we call bulking of the sculpture. And that you can use different materials. Here I have used plaster of Paris. Plaster of Paris is just a form of compound that is in powder. When you start off, it is in powder. But when you mix it with water, then it solidifies. Then it gives you some leeway, it gives you some strength on the skeleton. So after you've used plaster of Paris, then I will show you some instruments that you can use. Like these are used for like softening it out, carving out details and things like that. Yeah? Now, this is just a basic. I was just trying to use. I prefer to use plasticine now to do my final details. But it doesn't mean that you must use plasticine. Some sculptors prefer to use clay. I use plasticine because the miniatures are small and I can get my details better using plasticine. So when you have bulked and when you have sculpted, you end up with a product that is more or less like that. The cheetah is chasing the antelope, and it's almost at the point of what we call a catch, right? So there's a chase and then the catch. So that is what I'm trying to illustrate. Your details are now ready. You have finished the first step. From there, we make what you call a master mold, made from rubber, and the best rubber that you can use is latex rubber because it flows. It's in liquid form. Sometimes we have to use industrial, what we call industrial rubber or silicone rubber. The silicone rubber gives you this kind of a finish. When you apply the rubber on top of the sculpted piece, it takes in the details. Industrial rubber may not be perfect, but if it was latex rubber, it embraces the sculpture completely and absolutely. So you may not have the bubbles. Also, you have to note that I have divided the sculpture into 3. Sometimes you may even have to divide into 8 pieces, 7 pieces, or even 10, depending on the work that you're doing and how detailed it is, right? So this I have divided into 3, and I am very careful how the division is done. Because like now, when I get to the nose, you can see I've moved more to one side so that the detail remains in place, just to preserve the detail work, right? So you must be very careful how you divide your mold. And you can see at the ear, I have also gone to the side, right? To preserve the detail that is available there, right? Now, when you have finished making the master mold, the rubber is applied, and before it dries up, you put a fiberglass jacket. Fiber looks like this when it is go. This is fiberglass, right? Now, once you apply the fiber, with the use of resin, accelerator, and hardener, then you end up with a good form for the mold. This is very important because remember, rubber is soft, right? And it does not maintain the form or the shape on its own. It cannot. So this is also another mold. But because it is very small, I have just used rubber and have not applied a fiberglass jacket. But when you have a bigger piece that you're working on, you need to apply the fiberglass jacket to keep the form intact. So a mold, basically you can say it consists of a rubber inside with a detail and a fiberglass jacket. That is the second step. But remember, I still have the sculpture inside, trapped inside, right? So what we do is that we must release what is trapped inside there. And that's why now the division of the mold becomes critical. Because it will help you to release now what is inside, right? And remove all that is within. Because what we needed for all that effort, what we needed were the details only. And since we've captured the details, we do not now need whatever was inside here. So we discard it. Once we discard it, then we put the mold back together. It has to be done tightly. Once it is all together, I would have been very careful that I have somewhere to pour the mixture of the cast. Now that is the third step, making of the cast. Once your mold is ready for that, then you have to hold it together and you suspend it somewhere where it is all flat. And then now you pour in the mixture. The mixture will consist of lime. Lime is just also in powder form. And lime, together with resin. Resin is readily available in the market, liquid resin. So you make a mixture with lime and get it to be like a bit viscous. Once you mix it up and you get that kind of viscous mixture, you use accelerator. This is an accelerator, right? The accelerator is what accelerates the reaction, because this is cultured marble made in the lab, or made in the studio if you like, because we are artists. So it's called cultured marble because it's made in the lab. Then you apply a little accelerator and hardener. The hardener is the one that now hardens the compound, right? And then you get cultured marble. If I look at this now, this would have been now a final product. When it is finished, you have to do a lot of work in sanding out like the corners, Yeah, smoothing it out. I like to have a smooth finish. I use a lot of tools. All the tools are here that help me to achieve a smooth finish. Once I have a smooth finish, then there is the last and final step, which I use auto paint or automotive paint to do the final product.
Now, you had mentioned
Yes.
that the master mold
Yes.
comes in, can either be, the number of pieces depending on the nature of the work.
Yes.
Can you expand on that? What will decide, what will determine the reason for having maybe 2 pieces or several?
Okay. Thank you. The determining factor of why we should have, let's say, 1 piece of a mold, 3 pieces of a mold, is just dependent on the details that you have in your sculpture. For instance, this is a bust, and I have 3 piece mold. If I was working on, let's say, the cheetah and the antelope, I would need more than 3. They would probably end up being around 8 to 10 molds. Because every time you take a turn and you have a detail there, you must find a way of, covering it such that it is easy for you to release the mold finally. Just depending on the detail that you have on your artwork, and whether it's a full bust or a full sculpture, and whether it's just a section of what you're doing.
If I may,
Yes, go ahead.
would that mean that you're applying the rubber in pieces?
Yes, actually, a very good question. Once the sculpture is done, what I do is I use again plasticine to make divisions. I actually just literally have like a bridge between the two, right? So like I'm now trying to divide the cheetah into maybe two distinct sections, right? So I would have that bridge over, and then I would have another bridge maybe under. So I would do one section and finish. Once I'm finished with the right hand side, I remove the bridge so that when I'm applying the detail, now this one will be solid. I let this one dry so it will be solid. So once I'm done with that, I remove the bridge so that the two molds come into close contact with the other.
After we finish the mold and we come out with the cast, what are the guides when we are coming for coloring?
Yeah, good question. In the final touch, that is a gold finish. I want to say bronze is actually a mixture of copper and tin. Copper is what gives you the what we call highlights, right? And then the tin, because it's darker, it gives you the details, right? Or the shadows. The mixture of bronze is made in such a way that you have the two combining to make one, right? And so when I'm applying the paint, I have the same thing in mind. So I have two paints, a darker one which is literally black, standing in for the tin. And then I have the gold looking type for the highlight areas. So usually I start by applying the dark color all around. And then the highlights, I use the lighter color. Remember, it's automotive paint, so you have to keep thinning it. So you can use standard thinner. It works just equally as good. So you use standard thinner, you keep thinning it and applying. But the highlight areas, you use a technique called the dry brush technique in painting. We have that dry brush technique. So that's what gives you these highlights in the end. Yeah, and then you end up with a piece like this. You may also want to apply a clear varnish or lacquer. You know, sometimes you can do that depending on the kind of finish you want. If you want a very shiny finish, then you can use lacquer or clear varnish to finally finish your piece. So with that, I think we have concluded, unless there is something else.